So I cannot.
Oh, now we're set on that.
Here we go.
Great. All right, with that, having checked those two boxes, is everyone ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
All right, it is
Yes.
4:34. Welcome to the June 9th, 2021 BAR Large Virtual Meeting. My name is John Robinson. I'm the chairman of the Large BAR. The other board members present this afternoon are Luda Subchuk, Leon Scott, and James Metters. City staff present this afternoon are Tori Parrish, Lawrence Courtney, and Linda Bennett. The order of the meeting will be as follows. There will be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. There will then follow an application presentation. A 10-minute time period or additional allotments of time may be provided by the chair, and any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be they owners, developers, designers, consultants, or other affiliated parties, should speak during this portion rather than during public comment. There will then follow a period of public comment with a 10-minute period, 10-minute time limit or its equivalent, or as extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made during public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak during public comment must clearly state their name for the record. There will then follow a period of city staff comments and recommendations, which have previously been reduced to writing. There will then follow the applicant response or clarification to either the public comment and or the city staff comments and recommendations. There will be a 5-minute period for this response, which the respondent can exercise at their own election. They don't have to. There will then follow board discussion and a vote. The applicant presentation and public comment is now closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising their hand and waiting to be called upon, but otherwise may only speak if asked a question by a board member. This evening for our agenda, I see that the following item has been withdrawn or deferred. That would be item 2, which was 99 South Market Street for courtyard revisions. This is a polite reminder to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. This is a further reminder as to the purview of this board that you must limit your comments to architecture only. Comments relating to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. I have some further directives for the benefit of the public. The protocol will follow, the additional protocol will apply to tonight's meeting. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during their presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Chat and Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. Regarding public comment, the applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register prior to tonight's meeting, indicating they have had to indicate the project they wish to comment on and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applicants heard today are part of the public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called upon.
Well,
Have a little freeze. Oh.
yep. There we go.
Additional protocol notes regarding the board. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not read the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will temporarily be turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel. Ms. Parrish, what is agenda item 1 for this evening?
Agenda item number 1 is 13579 and 11 Ashley Boulevard. The request is for the 1-year extension of the conceptual approval for new construction of 4 single-family attached dwellings, requesting an additional half floor based on architectural merit and context. The first 1-year extension was granted last year, June 13th. I'm sorry. The first approval was granted June 13th, 2018, with the second 1-year extension granted June 20th, 2020. This is in the Charlestown neighborhood, which is in the Old and Historic District.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. We had some non-official discussion of how to handle an item like this, since there's some evidence that this is a matter of right. But to formalize things and to keep a clean record, we have agreed that unless Mr. Stevenson has to say anything, we're prepared to do a perfunctory vote on this extension unless there is further comment or unless Mr. Stevenson feels the need to comment at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Go
make
ahead,
a
Mr.
motion-
No comment here. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd
Mr.
make a
Bennett.
motion for approval of the 1-year extension of the conceptual approval.
Mr. Metters, your motion, as I understand it, is for a 1-year extension to be granted for conceptual approval of this project. Is there a second?
I second. This is Leon Scott.
Mr. Scott has seconded. I will therefore, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll proceed to call the roll. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on this motion?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Scott,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Yay in favor.
and myself, yay in favor. So the extension unanimously passes. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Stevenson. Glad that was not heavy
Thank you.
lifting for you. Mrs. Parrish, what is agenda item number 2 for this evening, as published in the agenda, has been withdrawn. What is
That's
agenda item number 3?
Agenda item number 3 is 98 Wentworth Street. This is the request for final approval for new construction of a 2-story addition to an existing church complex. The church is a Category 1 structure in Charleston Village, Old and Historic District. Then you have the aerial in the screen now, showing you the context. Wentworth Street, Wentworth Street is to the south. Glebe Street is to the east. I'm hoping I pronounced that one right.
You did?
Okay. This is an existing site photo of the portion of the project that you're reviewing tonight. This is to the left of the main sanctuary building, as you can see there. Looking down Wentworth with the project to your left. And looking west. Previous motion was the preliminary approval with staff and board comments. That was from last December. And previous staff comments were, A, it should be noted that this project has an issue for which it needs to go back before BZA SD. This was scheduled to happen the prior week, but was deferred due to a lack of quorum. Due to notification and scheduling issues, this meeting cannot occur until January 6, 2021. Staff was optimistic that the issue would be successfully resolved at the time, resulting in no change to the design presented here. B, the design has changed little from what was last received by the board. And C, the new details shown are consistent with the proposed design and materials, with only a couple of items to address or restudy as follows. Number 1, the cornice at the lowered eastern portion of the multipurpose assembly space continues to employ a pronounced cornice, which should be minimized in a similar fashion to the higher overall building parapet. 2, the joint at the through-all flashing at the base of the building, which is not shown in the elevations and elsewhere, needs to be minimized so as to be visually inconspicuous. And 3, staff recommended that a mock-up be required and reviewed by the board. Staff recommendation was preliminary approval with board and staff comments contingent upon resolution of the BZA site design issue, resulting in no design changes from that which is submitted here.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrish.
Okay. I will just go through the previous board comments. Some of the board comments were agree with staff recommendations, so little has changed. A Luco bond is foreign material. Represent a Luco bond on mock-up. Anticipate visible flashing not already shown in plans. The answer was no. Height change is okay, include in the motion, and fine with change to height.
Okay,
All right.
and I believe we have Mr. Young here tonight on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, sir.
How are you this evening, Mr. Young?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. You have the floor, sir.
All right. Thank you all for having us tonight. I'm Simmons Young. I'm here on behalf of Grace Church Cathedral, which is pictured here. I think we could, I'll just say attending tonight, we have members of the vestry and congregation. We have the senior warden, Susan Carter, here for questions if needed. And the landscape architect, Madison Rice from Mortimer and Klein, here also should you have any questions for them. We thank you for your previous consideration, and we're here for the final review. So I'm not going to spend too much time on familiarization with the building unless you request such. We could go to the next slide, and the next slide actually. So this is sort of the overall view with the design principles, and I'm glad to go into how we've executed these, but I'll just read through them unless, again, you request more. The idea is that the new building be deferential to the old, that is complementary to the east wing, which is known as Johnson Hall on the right-hand side of the page, in massing, especially at the front. The interior experience should have a strong connection to the cathedral, which is the sort of glass wall that we'll see. And then the extension should take cues, the exterior should take cues from the church, which is expressed largely in the windows and the three-part massing and the materials. Okay, we could flip to the next sheet, please. These are perspectives. So one of the important things, as you all will remember, was the view, maintaining the view of the cathedral spire itself, and also the stained glass windows, particularly on the clear story. And we did some sightline studies, which we'll see at the end, with a model, and spent some time on site looking at how this affected the building versus how Johnson Hall does. And then the lower perspective shows the cloister, which is influenced, is a very close match to what is on the other side of the building. The massing that's pulled in, the raised terrace, we are getting above the flood levels here to a 12-foot elevation that was discussed in the board motion, board approval. And we've made it so that the screen is less, the roof screen is less visible in the upper right-hand elevation by pulling it back a couple feet, which we'll see on roof plans. We could go to the next one. We can skip this page and the next one. These are just systems. The site plan kind of showing how everything parses together. The entry is from Cumming Street on the far left into a drop-off point at the upper left-hand side of the building, which is the northwest corner. And then yes, thank you. And then there's a courtyard that separates the building. We moved it to separate 30 feet. We had started with 25 feet, and on the board's recommendation, pulled it back 5 feet, and we also lowered the building. We could go to the next page. And this is just an overview showing some of the renovation work because of the demolition of the small building, which houses some of the children's ministries. So there'll be some renovation work, which is included in these pictures, but it's almost entirely interiors, so not relevant for tonight. We could go to the next one. And this is the overall first floor plan. And sheets A101 to A109 are all floor plans. I think we'll just click through them and let you all ask questions if there are any. It's a second floor plan. Yep, great. And these are renovation plans. Go to 104, please. And then these are renovations, 105. 106, I think is also a last renovation page, and then 107 and 108 are going to be, this is the detailed floor plan of the addition with a small terrace up front that mediates the grade, and we'll look at that a little bit more in landscaping. And then we could go to sheet 2. I'm sorry, A109. On the next slide. Great. This is the roof plan, and you'll see the roof screen. One of the things that was talked about for public comment last time was about the visibility and size of the screen. There's a lot of stuff that goes up there because we have a commercial grade kitchen that serves the community and the congregation. And of course, we've got a lot of air conditioning equipment. So what we were able to do after 3 configurations with the mechanical engineer was separate it a bit and push that wall over, I think 30 inches, 2'4", 30 inches, somewhere in there, to make that less visible from the street. So it's asymmetrical, but no one can see it, so it doesn't really matter. And then the next sheet, sheets A201 to A203 are the elevations. I know, again, that y'all are familiar with the building, so I'm not going to spend much time. Our little FDC sign in the upper left. We're getting the sprinkler around the corner, but the fire department requires a sign on the front. We'll go to the next sheet. One of the things that was talked about, that's probably not going to show up here, but showed up in your digital version, your PDFs, were control joints. We are direct applied to CMU for most of this building, not all of it. The upper 2 or 3 feet above the windows in the center elevation is stud, and there are joints approximately every 12 feet, which aligns with the middle of each pilaster. And then on the bottom elevation, the north side, our addition is to the right, and that's direct applied. So we're not required stucco control joints unless there's a building control joint, which we do not need back here. We will have some concealed in the masonry, tucked in those corners. We'll look at some details in a second. But the point is we're paying attention to control joints. A201 to A203, let's see, sorry, A203, great. This is the interior. We'll see a section of the cornice on in a little bit, and it'll explain why we're doing what we're doing. The overall building section on the left kind of shows the relation to the cathedral, and then there's at the end of it a small kitchen that's covered by some landscaping. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so sheets A301 to 309 are all wall sections and details. I know you'll have had these in front of you and probably in better screen resolution. So I'm glad to go through any of them, but I'll let you maybe select the ones that you want to ask me about. I will call your attention to sheet A302, details 4, 5, and 6. On the upper left-hand side, these are the control joints. In all the configurations on the building, and the most critical one, I think, that we talked about maybe last time is it detail 6, the one on the bottom, sort of the one that's sitting there alone in his own row, the second row down, a little bit higher than where that. It's actually one of those. There we go. Yeah, if it says if you can scroll to the left on that, up and left. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be able to get. And then right above this drawing. There we go. Typical through wall flashing. So we're not bringing the metal past the face of the stucco. I think that was Mr. Metter's particular point, and it is an important one. You know, just walking around town, you do see that nasty detail sometimes. But that's kind of what we're paying attention to in other places also. And then also on sheet 307, we'll look at this parapet detail comparison and edge detail. The parapet is on the upper left-hand side, Thank you. And then the on the lower right is the edge detail with the aluca bond or metal face. And the reason for that being different is the edge condition, we can keep that height lower. And that was something that was real important to us as we get closer to the church, we want to be lower. So that's why we moved to that. It does give us a nice overhang of that curtain wall, which protects it from all sorts of good weather stuff. A little bit more. We've pulled back to 11.5 inches. I think we were at 14 before, so it wasn't ever huge, but we pulled it back a little bit. And then one of the things we were talking about with staff was whether the lower portion of this kind of below the fascia, that would actually a little bit lower, yeah, right in there, that we're showing as metal too, and that could change to stucco if that was something that you'll important. Okay, and let me see, I'm going to try and wrap up here. I know my 10 minutes is probably close to up. We could go to A310, which is not too terribly important. Just, I'm sorry, 311 shows this little trash enclosure that we have that we're just trying to make, our utilities look nice. Sheet 320 is roof details. We've got cast stone up front, we've got metal in the back. And then the screen details on the left-hand side of this, that's a perforated aluminum that gets a little bit of air circulation around that equipment, which allowed us to get a little bit closer, make the enclosure a little bit smaller. And then there is on the bottom right-hand side, the glass rail detail, which has a finished aluminum post and rail. And that is, if you recall, that's in the very back of the courtyard. So very limited visibility. And then sheet 503 which is the next one. Yeah, handrail details showing some cast stone along the handicap walk on the ramp on the left-hand side of the building. Some cast stone stairs, which matches the existing at Johnson Hall, and then a 1990s edition as well in the back of the church. Some bronze, a bronze system that matches for the handrail that matches Johnson Hall. So we're trying to play to the same vocabulary in a lot of places. And then we can go to the landscape, which I think is next, or we have window details next, windows and window details. Lots of windows, which is great. And then the landscape site layout plan, the courtyard with blue stone. And we could keep going. I think there's a fence in this site plan actually that gets modified. That's the blue stone in the courtyard with a fountain at the end. And then the next landscape sheets are just this is the wall at the back and the gate at the playground. The playground got relocated. And okay, I think we're getting close to the end here. Next sheet maybe. There's a transformer we're trying to conceal, so we are lifting that wall height just a little bit from where it is currently. Otherwise, we're keeping the same design. And then we can go to the next sheet. That's sort of the overall. And then I think we're into photos potentially next. Probably a detail of that. You're welcome to ask me about that. Some plantings. And then the last sheets, which I'm not sure what the numbers are. They're just additional information showing some of the surroundings for reference. And then the last two photos are model studies that we've done in the last presentation. So with that, I think I'm going to conclude my presentation and open it up to y'all's questions. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Young, for that presentation. We will now proceed to public comment, if we have any this evening.
No public comment, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to city staff comments or recommendations.
Staff observation, the project has continued to develop well with only a couple of minor changes from what was previously seen by the board. And our staff comments are, number one, the parapet on the main hall courtyard addition has been minimized to an acceptable level. And two, staff will work with the applicant to minimize the through-wall flashing for review on the mock-up. Staff recommendation is final approval with board and staff comments with final review by staff.
That was wonderfully succinct. I think that was the effort of staff and the architect speaking the same language. That's great. We will now move to any applicant response. Mr. Young, anything to respond to in what the city said?
No, thank you.
We will move on to board discussion and a vote. What do my fellow board members have to say about this project?
I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask Simmons.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Simmons.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. And it could be that none of these things are visible, so they are not an issue. So just bear with me. There's four things. One is on the wall section 5 and 6, detail 1. I think it's sheet A300, where we've got the metal studs, the 5/8" cement board, the fluid applied, the building felt, and then the Portland on metal lab. Those areas, for the most part, are the areas that these expansion joints are going to be limited to, and they're pretty much just around the recessed areas of windows, right?
Well, in the top 3 feet.
In the top 3 feet, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And the metal clad wood, I was doing this with not access to a great computer, but the metal clad wood windows with metal trim. Who are those coming from?
Marvin, and it's the Ultimate Series.
And then the parapet cap, is the parapet cap covered with metal everywhere?
Except at the front, probably 15 feet of the building, maybe 20 feet of the building. In that section that's just a bit taller, that all has cat stone, but otherwise, yes.
And this one is especially, I'm not sure, visible anywhere, so, but it's just there's a built-in gutter detail with the membrane on it. And then the membrane comes from partially covering the top of the cap down into the built-in gutter, then goes up underneath the copper roof. And if that has to be replaced, do you then have to take the copper roof up at the bottom to replace the membrane roof?
So is that where the cloister comes in?
Sheet A, it's either 301 or 308, detail 6.
301, detail 6. Okay, let me just get there. I've got.
I can't read. It's either a 1 or an 8 on my notes. I'm not sure which I wrote.
Okay, I'm scrolling on my screen. I think that's where the cloister comes in, and that sure is a tricky spot. You nailed it.
Oh, it's tricky. Yeah, it's hard.
We've been working on that one.
Yeah.
Um,
And I don't know that it's visible, so it doesn't. We don't really have any. But I just didn't know. And
yeah.
But that's a tough one.
This does bring up generally a good point. I think I thought I had it, but I don't. Tori, do you have it on the screen?
It could have been 308. Yeah.
Yeah, is that it over there on the left? No. Okay, well, I think I get your point. In one of the nice things about this project is that we do have a contractor pre-selected, and we're going through these details with him. And I'll bring that one up to him and see what he thinks, because
Yeah, I think it looks great, Simmons. Thanks.
Thank you.
Further board comment?
I have none.
Thank you. I don't have any either, unless we want to hear from Luda. If not, I will entertain a motion from a member of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for a final approval with board and staff comments.
Okay. So, Mr. Metters, that your motion is to give final approval for new construction of the addition at the church complex.
Yes, sir. With final details if it's necessary to staff.
Okay, so let me restate that. To grant final approval to the new construction of the two-story addition to the existing church complex with staff comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second to that motion?
And pardon me, what was that? With final review by,
She mentioned in her comments, Lars Tori did, that she'd work with Simmons on mock-up details.
Yeah, that's what we meant by, well, final review by staff on working with the applicant for
Yes,
those flashing details.
and I'm agreeing with that.
Okay.
So do we agree, Mr. Metters, and hopefully to the staff satisfaction, that the statements just made would be incorporating staff comments?
I'm a yes to that.
Okay. So the motion, as I understand it, is to give final approval for new construction of a two-story addition to the existing church complex with staff comments. Is that
Yes,
correct in light of the conversation we've just had?
yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second. This is Leon Scott.
I will proceed to call the roll. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on this motion? Did we lose Sobchak? Oh, I'm going to take the hand sign to be a yay in favor, Luda. I think you have an audio issue. Is that correct? Lawrence, could we check and see on our end if we're responsible for Luda's audio issue?
okay,
I don't see anything that even shows her as muted from this end.
I don't either. I was just trying to figure out where the breakdown was.
Yeah.
Luda, are you agreeing to a yay in favor? If so, keep your hand up. If not, put your hand down. That's a yay in favor. Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And myself, yay in favor. Passes unanimously. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Parrish, what is agenda item number 4?
All righty, moving on. Agenda item number 4 is 24 George Street, College of Charleston. This is the Silcox Gym. The request is for conceptual approval of exterior repairs and replacements. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little bit more descriptive. Building envelope repairs to include stucco repairs, window and door replacement, roof replacement, and exterior painting.
Okay.
The building is not rated. It's in the Ansonboro neighborhood, and it was constructed prior to 1943. Context here, this building is at George and Meeting Street, most visible from the George and Meeting Street corridors, obviously. You can see it in the aerial there where it's located. And this is the image taken from the intersection of George and Meeting Streets. Facing George Street, the existing photos. And the facade that faces Meeting Street. Also taken from Meeting Street, looking south. These are historic images from 1996, courtesy of Historic Charleston Foundation. And the Sanborn maps show it on the 1944 maps and the 1951 map. And that's it for us. We'll have the applicant present.
Excellent. Mr. Altman?
All right, can you hear me?
On behalf of the applicant, I have the floor. Yes,
Yes.
sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. My name is Chris Altman. I'm with FMHA Architects. As Tori mentioned, the project's located on the corner of George Street and Meeting Street. It's part of the College of Charleston's campus and was constructed in 1938 as a public works project. Originally built as a gymnasium and continues to be at that capacity today. Consists of a mainly three-story structure with 4 stories on the rear, and is constructed as a multi-wide brick construction. The project's in the first stage of a state project, and with that we are developing a schematic cost estimate, which the college will use to request funds for the state to proceed to stage 2 in the development of construction documents and ultimately into construction. Given that the height, scale, and mass of the existing building are set, we are seeking conceptual approval on the overall exterior renovation approach, really. So we can have a clear direction moving forward to allow us to develop that cost estimate. There are 3 main areas of focus for the renovation: the stucco finish, windows, doors, and then the roof. So I'm going to kind of walk through those and give you a summary of each and explanation of our approach. If we could jump to sheet 04. Okay, starting with the stucco. The stucco finish is original to the building and to our knowledge has not had a comprehensive restoration conducted. During this initial phase, we have identified 2 main areas, one being directly above the main entry, and the second is on sheet 05, I believe can be seen, is on that northeast stair tower as having visible deterioration, mostly from water intrusion. These areas we're proposing to be removed, any required repairs to the underlying brick be conducted, and then proposing to replace a stucco finish in kind to match the existing. During the next phase of work, Applied Building Science, who we have on our team, will be conducting a comprehensive sounding of all the stucco to determine if there are any additional areas that will need repair. Also at that time, we will conduct testing on the existing stucco and mortar composition to determine what systems is most appropriate for the repair with, and then we'll present that to you at preliminary. You can go to page 06. There is noticeable damage to many of the steel lintels around the building, as shown in these photographs. Some have deteriorated to the point of actual damage to the existing windows. Currently, the stucco finish wraps the head condition and conceals those lintels, which in our opinion is not a good detail and has contributed to the deterioration of the steel lintels. So during the next phase of work, we're going to be conducting an in-depth assessment of each of these openings to determine if the lintel needs replacement, with the mindset if and be preferable if the existing lintels could remain if possible. For the lintels that are deteriorated though, we propose replacing them and reworking the stucco to promote a proper water drainage at those conditions, and we present details to you at preliminary. The original color finish has deteriorated pretty significantly over time, I think due to UV degradation. However, some of the original color does remain on the north elevation of the building, which we are proposing to match. Again, in the next phase of work, we would do some further studies and present to you a specific color that we would propose to use. You could go to 04, please. Okay. There are 2 roof conditions on the building. One, a large pitch slate roof on the main gymnasium area, which you can see in that bottom right corner, and then 2 low slope roof areas over the front entry and rear sections. Regarding the low slope roof areas, we're proposing to replace in kind with the mod bit roof system and rework the slope to improve some drainage issues on those portions. The copings found around the low slope roof areas and along the gable ends of the pitch roof have been a source of water infiltration for a while. And at some point in the past, a coating was applied to the top of them in an effort to resolve this. However, that coating has deteriorated over time and is no longer providing any meaningful protection. So we are proposing to install a new zinc or lead coated copper cap along the copings to provide a long-term solution there. As part of the first phase of work, a tier 1 seismic report was conducted by ADC Engineering to help determine how the overall building might perform during the seismic event. As you might guess, a non-reinforced multi-wide brick constructed building of this age would not score very well in that regard. Focusing on the pitched roof area, the submitted letter from ADC provides a little bit more insight into their recommendations for addressing structural deficiencies noted in the roof system. In that letter, ADC further indicates further strengthening of the roof diaphragm is required, which could also add additional weight to the roof structure that is already close to bearing capacity. As noted, any reduction of weight in the roof would help contribute to the overall performance of the building structurally and in the seismic event. And because of these recommendations, the college is interested in pursuing ways to reduce weight on the roof. To that end, we are requesting the board to grant us approval to pursue the option of replacing the existing slate roof with a synthetic slate roof. In our opinion, this approach is a good candidate for this project for the following reasons. These products, and we've researched 3 at this point, on average weigh about 1/3 the weight of natural slate, which constitutes a significant weight reduction. This roof is 4 stories above grade and only visible from a small section of George Street, so it's not a roof that would be easily seen or analyzed by a person on the street level. These shingles, synthetic shingles, meet wind load requirements and in our opinion perform better than a slate shingle in high wind situations. One of them, EnviroShape shingles, is actually made from 95% post-consumer material, and we feel like it's a more sustainable solution than quarrying of natural slate. The existing slate that's on the roof is a soft type slate and typically has a span of 50 to 90 years, depending on your source of information. And we believe is at the end of its service life and would need to be fully replaced anyway. The products that we're proposing all come with a 50-year warranty and have conducted accelerated testing on their products. At least one of them, EnviroShape, has been used on multiple historic structures around the country, some of them on the National Historic Registry. A few of them to point out is the Henry David Thoreau House in Concord, Massachusetts, built in 1730, George Eastman House in Rochester, New York, 1905, Rock Island Lighthouse in Fisher's Landing, New York, 1847 construction, and the Stephenville Museum in Stevensville, Texas, built 1815. Lastly, we understand while the economics are not typically a consideration for these types of decisions, we believe it is important to point out that this project is a public project and the college is tasked with being good stewards of public money with considering the life cycle costs, maintenance, and upkeep of their buildings. If we could jump to 06. Okay. Oh, there we go. With regards to the exterior doors, they have been replaced at some point in the past with steel doors that are not original to the building. And what we're proposing to do is replace those doors with new mahogany doors that actually match the profiles shown in the original 1938 drawings, which we have access to. Go to sheet 5. The existing windows are all wood, single pane, true divided lights. The college has had ongoing issues with vandalism to those large windows you see along Meeting Street, with many of the panes in the large gymnasium broken out. Due to the ongoing cost of replacing these individual panes, the college has unfortunately resorted to installing plexiglass covers over those individual pieces that are broken. In addition to the vandalism, the building is incurring considerable heat gain into the gymnasium and increasing energy costs due to the lack of the window's thermal performance. Lastly, the windows, as they stand, provide no impact resistance to high wind events. There has been some discussion with city staff and the preservation groups about the possibility of installing some storm windows on the interior to provide added thermal performance, but this would not solve, in our opinion, the issue of impact or high wind resistance. It is with these issues in mind, we are requesting the board to grant us approval to pursue the option of replacing the existing wood windows with new mahogany wood windows with insulated impact rated glazing. We feel this is an appropriate request for this situation for the reasons, in addition to what I just mentioned, it's our intent that these windows would match the profile of the existing windows and would not alter the aesthetics of the building. Dividers would be provided in the windows to simulate the divided glass, and details of those window profiles and dividers would be submitted to you during preliminary. The majority of these windows are located above the ground floor and not directly at the pedestrian level. As mentioned earlier, new windows would provide us a higher wind pressure protections for impact and increased thermal performance. And again, just as the Institute is good stewards of public funds, we believe replacing of these windows is the best option for long-term building maintenance, performance, and upkeep for the college. And lastly, we believe better performing windows would help contribute to ensuring this building continues to function for many more years to come. So that kind of concludes my overview of the work we're proposing on this project. Just to summarize, We're asking for conceptual approval with the option of replacing the existing roof with a synthetic slate and the option to pursue replacing the existing windows with new wood windows with insulated impact glazing. I appreciate your time and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Altman. It was very thorough. We will now proceed to any public comment. I know we have one letter. If either Mr. Courtney or Mrs. Parrish wants to put it up on the screen, I'm glad to read it into the record for anyone who's not here tonight. And do we have any live public comment?
We do have Mr. Justin Shrubler. If he wants to go live right now, and we'll dig up, we'll get the letter.
Thank you. Mr. Schwebler, you have the floor.
Can you all hear me okay?
We can now.
Yes.
Yes, this is Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. We would first like to thank the applicants for meeting with us to discuss this project. While we understand the applicant's goals for the project, we have a number of serious concerns with the overall scope of the project as presented, especially with the potential demolition of material from a historic building designed by one of Charleston's preeminent 20th century architects, Albert Simmons. We find that the proposed work is largely in conflict with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation of historic structures. First, the Silcox Gym has one of the largest slate roofs in the city, a testament to the college's investment in providing the highest quality architectural style and material for their buildings at the time it was constructed. From our own investigations and after reviewing the structural and seismic reports provided by the applicant, we feel there's insufficient evidence to support the total replacement of this slate roof with a synthetic slate. From photographic evidence in the structural reports, failure of the roof decking seems to be the primary cause of the deterioration, not the weight of the slate. We agree that the slate roof needs to be removed and the roof decking replaced and repaired, but a slate roof should be reinstalled on the building. Removal of this slate roof and the replacement with synthetic slate sets a dangerous precedent for the demolition and removal of historic roofing materials in the city. We believe that our city institutions should be held to the same standard of preservation ethics that what is expected of the private citizens of Charleston. The applicant mentioned to us that they want to help the college use their money in the most cost-effective way, which is admirable, but we feel that the reinstallation of a true slate roof that will last another 80 to 90 years is the best way to ensure the long-term cost-effective investment in the future of this building. Second, we also find that there's insufficient evidence to justify the demolition and replacement of the original windows and doors of the gym. While there's some evidence of material deterioration and rot, the windows seem to be in good condition overall. We understand the desire for security when dealing with broken glass, but that does not justify the demolition of all the historic wood windows. We recommend that the applicants look into the application of shatterproof UV blocking films that can be applied to the window panes. These films have almost no noticeable visual impact, especially at the elevated height of the windows on this building. These films can prevent the shattering of window panes, water infiltration through broken glass, and can be a significant benefit in blocking thermal transfer through the single pane glass. We also recommend the installation of interior storm windows for added insulation and hurricane protection. The maintenance and restoration of original wood divided light windows is a tenet of preservation ethics and is a sustainable, cost-effective process in the stewardship of historic buildings. Again, we feel that Charleston's institutions should be held to an equal standard of preservation and maintenance than that which is required of its private citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. And I believe we have a letter from Ms. Minigan.
I do. I can share it or I can read it.
If you share it, I'll be glad to read it
Okay.
into the record. I had it a minute ago. Oh, I have it. I can do it.
Okay, sure.
This is from the Preservation Society of Charleston, excuse me, care of from Aaron Minigan, their Director of Historic Preservation. A letter for today's hearing regarding 24 George Street, Silcox Gym. Dear board members, the Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out and discussing the details of the proposal. We are generally supportive of the project as a straightforward approach to address maintenance needs that primarily meet the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. However, in that vein, we would encourage the application to carefully consider retaining elements that can be repaired rather than seeking replacement, namely the windows. Also, we would ask that further information be provided on the request to replace the slate roofing. The application currently does not contain evidence of the existing roofing condition or visibility to support its removal. Also, we encourage the board to carefully scrutinize the details of the replacement material. We are concerned by the faux chiseled edge detail of the synthetic slate shown in the application materials and feel a material that better matches the detail of the existing slate should be pursued. Thank you for your considering our position on this matter. Signed, Aaron Minigan. Any further public comments?
I do not see any.
Okay. We will then proceed to city staff comments and recommendations.
A few staff observations. Staff takes no exception with the proposed painting, stucco repairs, door replacements, fencing, and coping wall repairs. 2, the South Carolina SHPO has determined that the work would meet the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and would cause no adverse effect. 3, regarding the proposed roof replacement with synthetic slate, according to the Secretary of Interior standards in regard to roofing, and the following come from the guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, recommends identifying, retaining, and preserving the functional and decorative features that are important in defining the overall historic character of the building. These include the roof's shape, decorative features, and roofing material, as well as size, color, and patterning. They also recommend, if using the same kind of material is not technically or economically feasible, then a compatible substitute material may be considered. And 4, the largest portion of visible roofing is from the eastern side along George Street. The lowest portion of roofing is approximately 46 feet over the grade. And then staff comments. Number 1, applicant shall describe the method to be used for removing the existing paint and preparing the wrought iron fencing for new paint. 2, applicant shall provide the design of new doors, door hardware, and railings at preliminary review. And 3, regarding board entertainment of synthetic slate for 24 George Street, due to the essential structural need to reduce the weight of the roof, the limited area of and distance of visibility, reasonable durability, sustainability benefits, and the anticipated, close appearance to the existing from the one view corridor, staff recommends that the board consider the use of synthetic slate product for this particular project. Various products are to be evaluated and presented to the board for approval by the time of final board review. Applicant shall provide and explain all relevant testing data related to weathering, warranty, and green aspects of the product. It is understood that this in no way constitutes a precedent and that materials which may deviate from accepted norms are approved on a case-by-case basis. And number 4, regarding the acceptance of custom painted wood SDL windows to replace all existing windows for 24 George Street, staff cannot support this request and advocates for the repair of existing windows to the extent possible with in-kind replacement of windows which cannot be repaired. To increase thermal efficiency and to meet code issues, interior storm windows are to be considered. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval with staff and board comments for the stucco repairs, painting, door replacements, railings, and other exterior repair work. Further investigation and consideration of the proposed synthetic slate and denial of the SDL windows to replace all existing windows. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrish. If he so desires, Mr. Altman or his designee may have a response or clarification on behalf of the applicant.
Not necessarily. I think we've addressed all of these in our comments. As far as the windows are concerned, I think from the college's standpoint, they're looking at it from a long-term ownership of the building standpoint and what would be the best, solution for the next 100 years of this building, trying to meet never-changing environment that we live in here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Altman. And I'm certainly sympathetic to those considerations. Some are not, which are not directly subject to our purview, but being in this world, we all do in fact understand. Having concluded the applicant's response and clarification, I will open this project up for board discussion and a potential vote. What do my fellow board members have to say about the Silcox Gym project?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll start. This is James.
Yes, sir.
The plan that was laid out for the stucco study to include the steel lintels, testing for compatibility of replacement stucco, color, and other details, I thought that sounded appropriate. I would like to have what those details are, what those protocols are written out. On the windows, I'm not comfortable giving conceptual approval without knowing exactly what a replacement attempt may be. But I think even knowing what that attempt may be, I would not be in support of the way it was presented tonight. And Chris, what I'm trying to do is to give you my thoughts for, moving down the road with this also. The doors, because it was very brief on the doors, essentially we're going to take the door appearances back to the way that they were, and you can be using some type of sapele or mahogany or other stuff. That would be a positive material for our environment. I think that just is very brief statement, but I think that sounds like a good plan. The roof, a comment on the coping. Is there a way for that coping piece to come off and a piece of metal to be installed and then the coping reinstalled back on top of the metal? That's another way to keep the water from going down into the wall below. I don't know if that's possible or not. But I've studied a lot of synthetic slates also, and without more information about the specific environmental shake or other shake that would be chosen as part of a presentation for replacement, I'm not comfortable with voting on conceptual approval for replacement of slate with a synthetic material. I would overall like to see more of a inventory of all of the details that are going to be replaced. So, and I don't know where you are in the research portion, but what's the real inventory, north, south, east, west, exactly what's going to happen, and I'd like to see that before conceptual approval.
This is Leon. Leon Scott. I too have I'm sympathetic, obviously, with cost of the project, but I really have a problem with the synthetic slate. I just have a real hard time, and I too have a problem with giving conceptual approval based on the slate as well as the window replacement. I'm just not very comfortable with that. And as several have commented, I would like to see more of perhaps research done into what can be preserved and perhaps repaired in terms of the slate before we just make a decision to replace it with some form of synthetic material. So overall, I too, I would not be able to feel comfortable giving conceptual approval on this.
To give some helpful feedback, I would actually say the opposite of my two colleagues in regards to what I consider the greater priority or concern. I don't know that I have as much heartburn about the synthetic slate, depending on the final product, as I do about these very prominent windows, and specifically Mr. Metter's concern that we have clarity on what the replacement windows look like, as well as both some material and physical detail as to these replacement doors. And I agree with Mr. Metters that replacing the doors to their original 1938 appearance in the original material, or a nice substitute for that instead of these metal doors, is the direction you want to head. I agree with that, but I am reticent or reluctant to stipulate to the replacement of windows, even if they conform to staff's comments, without having seen what exactly that replacement is going to be, its dimensions, appearance, material, etc. So I share that concern with Mr. Metters. Mrs. Sobchuk has emailed us to indicate that she is able to hear us, but she has lost audio for some reason. She is still voting because she's able to do that. She's going to vote by hand. She's recorded as present and able to vote. She's unable to offer comment on this particular matter. So I think that may close board comments unless Mr. Scott or Mr. Metters have something to add, and or we can entertain a motion at this point in regards to this project.
I have nothing more to add.
Is there a motion from the board?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to deny this request for conceptual approval as presented tonight.
That was, let me be clear, Mr. Matters, that was a motion to deny.
So help me with this, Mr. Chair, defer be better?
Traditionally, that's where I think we have potentially have some more latitude. So given the exact circumstances and the fact that we seem to not have completeness of information in regards to the proposal, I think the deferral is in order, but it is your motion, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that, though. And I would like to make a motion for deferring this application for conceptual approval. And thanks again.
Yes, sir. So Mr. Metter's motion is a motion to defer conceptual approval at the current time. Is there a second?
This is Leon. I second.
Mr. Scott seconds. I'll proceed to call the roll by visually looking at Ms. Sobchak in her room. Mrs. Sobchak, how do you vote on the motion to defer? Mrs. Sobchak votes a yay in favor by raised hand. Mr. Scott, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And myself, yay in favor. Mr. Altman, I want to thank you for your very thorough presentation. I think you've seen the challenges, limitations, or concerns that we have, especially with the new material and these windows. I think these are issues that you can address, and the completeness of information will certainly help. But we do thank you, and I hope that you find that the feedback tonight was helpful to you as you try to move this project along.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Mrs. Parrish, I believe that completes our agenda for tonight.
That completes the agenda.
Is there anything for the good of the order or the board?
I don't have anything.
I have nothing.
I want to thank the public, staff for their participation, my fellow board members for their time, although it's a rainy evening outside my window, so I don't know that we have anything better to do. Thank you again for your participation, earnestness, and hard work, and I look forward to seeing you at our next regular meeting.
Thank you for your help, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.